reimagining slash prequel was a big surprise to me. I never expected to like it that much, but I really did. It was a fun, exciting show that I looked forward to every single week. It just came out on DVD and you can currently watch it on Netflix. Series 2 recently started in the US and is about to start here in the UK. In fact, depending on when this video is uploaded, it may even have already started. It is a show that I recommend whether you are a fan of the Psycho movies or not. I really like the original Psycho, but I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't have much memory of it. I haven't seen any of the sequels, so I didn't expect to really enjoy the show or understand a lot of things in the series that actually happened. But instantly I was hooked in by its believable performances, interesting plots and fantastic sets. The creator has essentially said that it's the modern day Twin Peaks, and although it's nowhere near as good as Twin Peaks, you can definitely see some inspiration from it in the show. So let's get down to the different categories I have in Channel Changer. The story of Bates Motel is that Norman and Norma Bates buy and move into a motel in the town White Pine Bay in Oregon. They do this after Norman's father is found dead in a garage. They name this motel the Bates Motel. Norman moves to the local high school and ends up getting tangled in a love triangle between Bradley, the bitchy, slutty, cheerleader-esque girl, and Emma, the geeky, loyal girl that manages to get Norman a job working her father's taxidermist. Norma gets verbally abused by Keith Summers, the previous owner of the hotel. One night, Keith breaks into the house and starts to rape Norma, but Norman comes in and knocks him out to save her. He leaves the room to get something to help Norma, and she grabs a knife and stabs Keith to death. They then go and dump the body into the lake. Norma starts to get pressured by the police, who believe Norma is guilty, and she starts to have a romantic relationship with one of the officers to try and get them to get off her back. Norman starts to hang out with Bradley, which Norma doesn't like at all. At the same time, he starts to hang around with Emma, a girl that Norma actually really does like, and later in the series even hires to work at the motel. In the second episode, Norman's brother Dylan moves into the hotel. He gets a job as a guard in a pot field. Norman and Emma find an old book in one of their guest rooms. Emma starts to try and find stuff out about it as an excuse to hang out with Norman. They end up getting tangled in a massive thing that neither of them can handle. They find out that Keith Summers and Zach Shelby, the person that Norma's with, have an underground sex trafficking ring in the motel. The series is essentially about Emma and Norman trying to stop it from happening, Norma trying to evade the police, and a mysterious guest who's really fucking creepy, and also Norman trying to stay with Bradley despite the fact he has Emma. There are plenty of twists and turns that I really loved. It doesn't have a perfect story, but it's still a lot of fun. There are a few subplots that I wish actually went somewhere instead of just ending up nowhere, but apart from that, the story wise, this show has some great moments. Many of the characters on the show range from being incredibly likable to absolutely despicable. Bradley is without a doubt the most unlikable character in the entire show. I know she's been through a lot, and in the second episode she literally sees her dad die, but I still cannot stand her. I think this is intentional though. She basically screws Norman and then shuts him out and starts trying to get with his brother instead. There isn't a single second where she is on the screen that I actually like her, not even in the first episode. Norman even gets beaten up in the last episode of the series because of her. Norman sadly is another character that I didn't really like. There are some moments where he's actually pretty awesome. Whenever he loses his cool, he actually becomes really creepy. This is mainly because how well Freddie Highmore does in the role of Norman. When I heard that the kid from the shitty Willy Wonka remake was going to be playing Norman Bates, I thought it was a terrible idea. But as soon as I saw him in the first episode, I knew he was going to nail it. And he did. However, the character has moments where you just cannot stand him. Whenever he's going towards Bradley and falling in love with her, I really felt like screaming at the TV. He does have moments where you feel bad for him though. especially whenever he argues with his mother. Whenever he argues with Norma, he is always right, and she never is. These moments are when Norman is at his most likable. I just wished he could have been less of an arrogant dick. I know he's going to be a serial killer, but Dexter is a serial killer and he's incredibly likable. In fact, you root for Dexter in that show, but not for Norman here. Norma is one of the more likable characters on the show. There are moments where she can be a bit bitchy, but she mainly does this because she's really protective of Norman, which I understand. Vera Farmiga does a fantastic job in the show and probably gives one of the best performances on it. Without a doubt, my favourite character on the show was the incredibly likeable Emma. She was a character that I really felt bad for. She knew exactly that Bradley was bad for Norman, she knew that Norman was ignorant, and when she finally gives up on him, instead of getting all sympathetic for Norman, I pretty much said good riddance. The episode where she eats the pot brownies is actually really funny, which is not something I expected from this show. Olivia Cooke gave a really good performance and I look forward to seeing what she does next and of course what happens to her character in series 2. There are other characters in the show that are kind of bland, especially Dylan and Sheriff Romero. Dylan always sticks up for Norman, but at the same time is trying to fuck Bradley. This is the only thing I don't like about him, but at the same time I don't really like him at all. There's not much to like. But I don't hate him, he's just there. Sheriff Romero's story has only just started. I know he will be more and more developed as the show progresses, which is good. However, in series 1 he isn't developed enough to be likable or even an unlikable character. At the end of the last episode of the series, there's a massive cliffhanger about his character, which I know will be resolved in the next series, which hopefully will give us more backstory about him. Villain of the show is Jake Abernathy, who used to have an agreement with the original owner that he would stay there once a month. Norma starts to expect him of stuff and Jake basically tells her to back off. As she gets closer and closer to working out his secrets, he becomes more and more deadly and becomes an incredibly creepy character. The show hasn't really got horror elements to it, but this character is really creepy. I hope there are more characters like this to follow in the later series. Pretty much every TV show has problems, except for maybe Breaking Bad, and Bates Motel is no exception. There are a lot of things that I really didn't like in the first series that I hope is improved in future series. The pacing is a little slow at times. There aren't enough moments where shit really starts to build. When it really gets exciting and epic, that is when the show's at its best. The rest of the time it's kind of just like Twin Peaks. It's very slow, but it can be intriguing. The slow parts are definitely interesting at times. I just think there could have been less of them. There is a subplot about Norman's teacher who really wants Norman to allow one of his short stories to be published. This plot point is way too boring and adds nothing to the show. It all builds up to one final scene in the last episode that really just wasn't worth it. There are a lot of uninteresting subplots like this in the show, such as Dylan's job at the pot field and Norman's love triangle with Bradley and Emma. This stuff just didn't have to be in the show at all, and at times just really ruined some awesome moments. So the show definitely does need some more focus. The final episode of the series is without a doubt the best episode so far, and it did make some of these plots finally build up to something. The problem is that the series ends with none of them really being properly concluded, so that means we have to sit through another few episodes where things are being resolved even more. I just hope they get this shit over and done with quickly. The characters needed a little bit more fleshing out as well. As I said earlier, there aren't really enough likeable characters in the show, which is a massive downfall. The likeable characters are really likeable whenever they are on screen, but sadly when the unlikable characters are on, you just feel like the show is creating useless padding which really doesn't work. One thing that really confused me was the fact that it's set in modern day. It's essentially a prequel to Psycho, but people are walking around using phones and driving brand new cars. It didn't make much sense. However, I did manage to look past it quite quickly. Apart from this, there aren't really many other problems with the show. first series of Bates Motel was a gripping, exciting, thriller-shast drama with a ton of potential. There are some fantastic moments in there mixed with a ton of filler. The characters aren't likeable enough, the subplots are uninteresting, and the show lacks a lot of focus, but it's still incredibly fun and could become one of my favourite shows if they make it better in the next couple of series. There's a lot to like and a lot to hate about Bates Motel. Its Twin Peaks style of storytelling has its ups and downs, and the last episode was a bit unsatisfactory, but I still really enjoyed it a lot, and it was one of my favourite shows of 2013. Bates Motel was a really good show. Far from perfect, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. My final score for Bates Motel Series 1 is a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching Channel Changer, and I'll see you on the other side.